we are going to go ahead and get started. I am very excited for today to have you on with us. We have 10 tips and tricks for grant writing to walk through. And as your host, Heather Safkin, I bring lots of past experience to you. So let's go ahead and dive in and get started. Here's what you can expect from today. Please enjoy the humor. I like to weave humor in and out of presentations and webinars just to have a little fun, lighten the mood. So please enjoy it. And go ahead and use the chat section for any questions or comments. And what we've done is gone and had everybody's videos and microphones muted. And so what that does is it allows just a clear webinar to occur. So I would also like to make sure that you know what's coming in July. And this is absolutely huge and exciting. Whoops, got a little crazy here. Not letting me go back to the beginning. All right, so a little bit about me. I am here. These are my two amazing boys. Do have a husband. For some reason, he didn't make the cut of photos. Anyway, I live in Reno, Nevada. I've been here for almost 3 years. And I just started my grant writing business about 1.5 years ago. And it's all based on past experiences that I've had for over 15, probably 20 years plus. And I have actually been able to go through and comb through all of these things that I've done. So I started out working with a nonprofit probably when I was about 16, 17. It was my senior year of high school, actually. And I just dated myself. Darn it. Anyway, so I was working with this nonprofit, smaller one, and we did a lot. It was like wearing many hats, right? And what we did was a lot of food bank, crisis center, child care centers, working with home daycare providers, after school programs. And through all of this, I've worked with this organization for probably about 10 plus years. And I've been the director for after school programs, resource referral center. Through all that, I've done a lot of grant searching and grant writing. And then I moved to San Francisco and started working with a funder. Changed my whole perspective on how grants are written, because being able to see on the back end of what's done is a game changer, first of all. And I also learned, because we helped develop strategies and wrote the grant questions and how to score the grants, did a lot of reviewing of grants and scoring them, of course. So this was an eye-opening experience. And really what I've done is wrapped a lot of these components and learned experiences up into a couple different packages. And I shouldn't say packages, just my experience that I'm offering you. And so there's a few pieces here that I'm really doing this. Here's my goals for why I've put a lot of my content and information together for you. And I want to share this with you today. So what we have for goals for today, and kind of in general, actually, when I work with you, are really learning how to save your time. This is huge. Grant writing can be super daunting and overwhelming. And how do you cut through to figure out what it is that you really need? What are they asking? I really want you to be able to save your time and focus in on what's important. Now, goal number 2 is to walk away with some examples. And I'll really be giving you some examples around your mission and your vision, not your mission and your vision, but your needs statement or your problem statement. This is huge. This is something that I've pulled out of a lot of my materials and made sure that I highlight today, because I feel like it's one of the most important pieces, learning how to convey it. So the third goal is that I want you to become aware of a lot of the technical components for grants that funders are looking for, and that how closely do you pay attention to them? Super important. Now, let's go on. So the first two tips are going to be about what you need to do before you write the grant, right? What are some of the prep stuff and what are some of the things to look for beforehand? And right away, tip number one, you got the grant, read the grant 3 times. This is huge, massive in time saver. You might think it is costing you time, but let me tell you, it will save you time. So the first time you read it, you just want to make sure that you hit all the requirements. And this is huge because you could get through and you could realize later that you don't hit one of those requirements. So then the second time that you run through, I want you to think about the nonprofit, how your nonprofit fits into those requirements, right? So these sound like they're the same, but it's more so about you might hit the requirements, but do you fit into them in a very puzzle piece manner, or are you trying to shove yourself into it because you just need the funding and it's going to be a waste of time? So you really need to think this through. And then the third time is making notes of the buzzwords. So when grant or funders and grant writers, they write their strategies and they write their grants, they have specific things they're looking for and they use the words that they're looking for. They're buzzwords. So what you want to do is take those buzzwords and incorporate them into your grant. All right. So I am not sure if you've ever written a whole grant before and realized it's not quite going to work. Well, I'm going to tell you a couple stories. Here are the top 2 reasons why you need to make sure that you read all the requirements. I mean, these are huge, really. I would highly recommend making sure what bucket you fit into. So will audited financials be required? And this is big because if you're a smaller nonprofit or like in your infancy stages, probably in the first 3 years, you're still making maybe some smaller amounts of money. And this is an assumption. Some are like skyrocketing, right? But if you don't have an outside entity that has done your financials for you or audited your financials, then a lot of organizations are not going to fund you. And that's okay because there are a lot of others that will. So just make sure, like this is the first thing I look at. When I'm working with a nonprofit and I'm writing grants for the nonprofit and I'm searching and I know that they don't have audited financials, then this is the number one thing I look for in the grant. If I see, okay, it kind of matches, I'm not going to read anything. I just got to quickly find if it requires audited financials. Number one. The second piece are specific locations. So here's a story with that. I was super excited, found this grant for this organization. I wrote the entire grant, probably 15 pages. And then I went back through and looked to just make sure I had everything in there and requirements and stuff. And I find out that this grant is only offered for organizations operating in Chicago area. Well, this organization was operating in Nevada. I just wasted all of that time because I didn't follow this nice number one tip. Read the grant 3 times. And it's the requirements of the grant. It's the background of the grant. You need to know the whole scope of it. So tip number 1, read the grant 3 times and pull these components out to make sure you're hitting everything that you need to. All right. So tip number 2, research the organization before the grant, before you write the grant. This is like preparing for an interview. Same concept, right? Think about it. If you walk into an interview and you know nothing about this company that you're working for, you just want a job, and they start asking you, what's your, where do you see yourself in 5 years, or what's your mission in life, or there could be some bigger questions, and nothing of what you say or even the questions that you ask are tied to their organization. Do you think that they want to hire somebody that hasn't connected with them? Same thing with a funder. If you don't know anything about their organization, that's a missed opportunity. You want to make sure you connect, and you're making sure that your grant and what you're asking for is tied to their mission. So I'm going to give you a quick example here. And, this is part of finding your alignment. One of the things that happened when I was working in San Francisco for the funder, we went through a funding cycle. We're reading and scoring grants, and we had some new grantees, potential grantees that we had never funded before. And so we wanted to do a deeper dive and learn more about their organization. So we went out to interview them, essentially, see their facility and check things out. And when I sat down with them, I was asking questions of how much they know about our organization. They didn't know anything. All they knew were exactly the guidelines of what we put out in the grant. So here's the difference. We may have funded a whole bunch of different strategies, and I'm going to give you a more concrete example that might help you. So let's say that an organization's mission that is a funder is to decrease the high school dropout rate. Okay. So let's put it in a positive, right? You always want to try and put things in a positive. So their whole mission and their goal is to increase high school graduation rates. See how that's another tip that's not written down, just flip things to the positive. Okay, so they want to increase graduation rates, high school. Now, this organization, let's say they're putting out strategies and wanting to fund early childhood literacy projects. All right, so I come along and I apply because I have a child development center and I'd love to utilize some of this funding for literacy in our child development center. That would be awesome, right? Be great. So then all of a sudden I get to the second stage, this funder is asking me questions, we're talking about it. I missed the boat. I didn't do research, we'll say. I did not look and see why they're funding early childhood literacy. It's because if a child is if a child is reading at grade level by third grade, then they're more likely to graduate high school. It is a statistic and it's been proven. And so that's why there's this huge push in that area. Well, if I don't know that and I don't express that that's also a vision and that we want to empower parents to understand this, like there's a whole nother level I could have gone with this grant. But I didn't research the mission and the vision of this organization. Please remember to do that and make sure to integrate it into your grant if it fits with your mission. And if it doesn't, then don't write the grant. Okay, enough with tip 2. I think you get the picture. Let's go to tip 3. So now we're going to dive into what's important when you're writing the grant. So I've done 3, I've pulled from my content and materials to share with you the 3 most important components I feel are when you're writing a grant. And I actually have a course that are the 10 essentials for grant writing. And so I've pulled 3 from that to create this tip sheet. And so that's what's included here. So tip number 3 is defining the problem and the solutions clearly. Most often and I will say smaller and medium-sized nonprofits, they have a hard time articulating their problem that they're trying to solve. Most businesses and nonprofits form when there's an issue or a problem, and they form to solve it. And it's your role to articulate that process. So I ask you, what problem are you trying to solve? Oops, don't want to go there yet. So what problem are you trying to solve? And then if you already have that in your mind, that's great. And how can your organization be the superhero to solve that problem? And remember, when you're writing this, you might be a small portion of trying to help the big problem. And maybe you are a big solution to a big problem. Just remember, it's okay, even if you're just doing little bits of a big problem. So we're going to look at some examples here. And if you, I will, you'll get this recording. So, don't worry about taking too many notes or anything, but you can if you want. You can screenshot this if you even want. I am going to give you 3 different examples of a problem. And then I think it's important to add the reason, if you know the reason, and your solution, because sometimes the reason is what tells you how to be the solution. All right, so the first one up is really, this is from Blue Jay Synergies, amazing organization. I will tell you, well, I'll read this first. So there are 2.7 million emergency room visits each year due to youth sports injuries. Okay. And we are on a mission to change that by providing the 5 basic pillars of sports health to families with children in sports. This woman is amazing. She has been in college. She's been an athlete, first of all, for most of her life. And then she became a college physical therapist, and she would do travel with the teams. And so she saw injury after injury after injury. So her whole goal, and she even says that she saw injuries that these college students had before they even came into college, like high school and earlier on. So her mission is to really prevent a lot of these injuries occurring in the future. Now, she is just really wanting to get it into the hands of people. You can see clearly her mission. She's passionate about it. If you go to her website, it's amazing. But this is like one of the best examples I see and I have. You can just feel it, and it's simple, right? You get it instantly. Oh, okay. Now let's look at this next one. There are approximately 47.5 million families in the United States living on a low income wage, which has almost doubled in 60 years. Why? We don't have the why. This organization, oops, I didn't put the, okay, so this organization is an organization that takes families, or not families, individuals who want to work, or like maybe they're on public assistance, maybe they have a really low paying job, but they want to go through and eventually be at a higher paying job. So they take them through, they do them job training, and then they help do placement. And it's to be in a job that pays $30,000 or more a year, right? So the whole goal is just to propel them past that low income status. And 30,000 can be low income in some areas and not in others, but their path is to get them way more than that. So this mission might be, it's a little piece that they're doing towards the large issue. And there's so many other things happening, but they're at least working towards it. So there's one other example. And then here's the last one. Today, 785 million people, this is 1 in 9, lack access to safe water at home. And 2 billion, 1 in 3, don't have access to a toilet. I can't, as an American, I cannot imagine this. So the water crisis negatively impacts the health and livelihood of more than 1/3 of global population. We exist to change this. So you can see there's a variation here. This last one has the problem, it has the reason, and they don't put their solution there in their problem statement. So what they've done is that they take, and the next like 2 paragraphs is their solution. So I highly recommend trying to have something like the very top, which that's almost like not your tagline, but in essence, kind of your tagline, to where you have your problem, your reason, and your solution all in like 1 or 2 sentences zipped up. And then underneath that, when you're writing, you just continue to elaborate so much more on, okay, where do you get your numbers? How does this occur? Why does this happen? Let's keep going into it. So tip number 3, really learning how to define the problem and the solution clearly. And I do have some, I have workbooks and stuff that I've worked on to where I can help you clearly define this. Okay, budget. This is another piece that's massive. And I put here, you want to start with a budget. Why? Because the budget drives what you're writing in your grant, why you're writing it, how you're writing it. Like they want to know how much you want and why you want that much. So I like to do the analogy of creating a budget as like meal planning for the week. You got to figure out your meals. You got to look at all of your ingredients, figure out what ingredients you already have, what ingredients you need, how much those ingredients are going to cost, where you can get the ingredients. All of those are the same as developing a budget. So same concepts, right? So if you have a project, what are all the materials and supplies or personnel that you need for that project? What do you already have? What do you need? And what funding have you already received? So let's look at this. Oh, this is a little blurry. Hopefully you can see this. If I'm going to skip the first, we're just looking up here at the top gray across. So funding request, and I'll come back to that. And then we have cash funding committed to your project already. So that is what is already committed. Okay, and you break it down. What personnel costs are already committed, what fixed expenses, you can have maybe it's your supplies, it can be you have nonprofit insurance, there's lots of different things that could already be committed to it. And then you have in-kind support. In-kind support is keys. And some grants really care about it and some don't. It doesn't matter. You need to track it. In-kind can be anything where you have volunteers. That can be converted to a cost, a dollar amount, each state, but I think the federal even puts a tag on how much it's worth per hour for a volunteer. I think it's like $23 or something. I got to remember. I got to go back and look. But you can have people that donate supplies, especially like if you're a food bank, what's food is donated, that's all in kind. So this shows that you're working with other organizations and it's really powerful tool. Other funding not yet committed to the project. So this is the column where you are saying that we need that funding, but we're not asking for you. So now let's go back to the first one is the funding requested. That's where you're asking funding from them. So maybe it's only a $10,000 grant, but you need, I don't know, $100,000. So you would just split it up into these different areas. Then the last column is total project and operating budget. That's how much it's totally going to cost. And I just did the snapshot of the top, not the bottom. But I do want to give you an example below here because sometimes when you're talking to a funder, they really want to have something foundational of, my money is going to do X. Maybe the money is going towards paying for food and paying for transportation and supplies, but really what does that do? Maybe that allows for individuals to receive food on a daily basis. Like there's lots of different things you want to be able to explain. And so in a short condensed version here, we have a food bank, serves 100 families a month. We have a wait list of 20, and we figured out the cost per family of 4 is about $5,000. All right, so we need $100,000 to serve these 20 on a wait list. Anything on a wait list is really good to share with people, with the funder. Like, we've been doing this, we need extra funding to serve X. They're just waiting for food or whatever service you're providing. We have funding from donations that takes care of $40,000. That's great. You have other funding coming in. That serves 8 families. Now we only need $60,000 to serve 12 families. So that's our ask. We need $60,000 to serve 12 families for a full year. Okay. Super simple and concrete and simplistic. That's what you want to get to. And this would be part of your budget narrative. So I give you just kind of like a snapshot of what a budget might look like and the beginning of it, and some content of what you would put in your budget narrative. And I go way more into that into some of my other content and courses. Okay, so the third tip of most important pieces are sharing your success stories and your impact. And there's 2 buckets here that I want you to be very aware of. You might be an organization that has been around for years, or, you've got some stories that you could tell and you just need to figure out how to share them and in what media or what fashion. And then you have your starting out group, which you might be, maybe it's 3 years, about 3 years is the startup phase, I feel 3 to 5. And maybe you have a pilot program that you've started. So if you're just starting out, here's some ideas that you can go with. Talk about your pilot phase. If they're asking for the impact that you're having and you haven't yet got the results of your pilot program, then talk about what you're doing in the pilot program. And this is key. Most organizations, I shouldn't say most, some organizations, they start because they see a need, but they might not have done the research behind it. And when I talk about research, it's like the approaches that you're utilizing to solve the problem. This is research. And a lot of times you think something might be a great idea, but have you done research to see if it's been implemented before? Are there other organizations that are doing the same and there needs to be help and more organizations doing it? Do some research around this. If you're starting out, this is the stuff you talk about. That you talk about the research you've done. You talk about the data, like maybe you connect and have a one-on-one with another nonprofit that's doing the same work you want to do. Nonprofits are pretty supportive. Now, especially if we're all trying to help and support as many individuals as possible. And organizations are not always just about helping people. They're animals, environment, so it's broad. But here you can write about the research and what you've done and what you're planning to do and why it's going to be an impact. And then if you've been around for a while, you can utilize videos. You can utilize statistics from your own, like collecting. This is the thing. Some organizations just do the work. They don't collect data. They don't realize that they need to track their participants and figure out their success. And this is something I go way more in depth on in my course, but really I want you to think about 3 different questions. One is, how many did you serve? 2 is, how well did we do it? So that's a reflection of yourself, the organization, and the approaches. And the third one is anybody better off? And I didn't put this in here. I don't always share that, but it's really important. And going into outlining all of those components is really, really strong, makes you a strong candidate, and it makes your organization stronger when you can answer those 3 questions. So once again, it's how much did we do? So it's like, how many participants did we serve? How well did we do it? So it's a reflection. Did we do surveys on our service? And is anybody better off? So that's testimonials that you get on how it might have changed their life. I worked with this organization and they had a whole page linked to their website of just testimonials from their past participants. Super great idea. So in grants, I just insert their webpage and it's good. It's there. Okay. Tip number 6. So now we're moving into technical tips. And these are important to make note of. Number 1, technical tip. Never use acronyms. You can see here, NUA. What is NUA? Never use acronyms. Kind of a funny. One of my marketing person that I've been working with lately, he came up with this and I thought, what is NUA, when he wrote it first? And I thought, but this is brilliant. It's great. All right. So what does the brain do when you don't know what something is? Do you make it up? Do you look it up? What do you do? Sometimes I sit there and try and figure out what it is. This is a waste of time. Don't waste the reader's time on the other end. So after reading hundreds of nonprofit proposals or reviewing grants for nonprofits to help increase their success rates, I waste a lot of time either going back, like say in the first paragraph, you put the full name of your nonprofit or of your project, and then you in parentheses put the what it is, like the NUA, you put the condensed version. As a reader, you almost have to do that. You need to put that in there multiple times because, or acronyms, I had to stop, go look something up and then come back and finish reading. And, I'm done. Like it just wastes a lot of time. So when you're writing these grants, be really careful about using acronyms. Just stay away from them completely. If that means you have to rewrite stuff or not rewrite it, but it's longer, then so be it. Sometimes you only have like a certain area that you can write in the grant. So you might use it then, but I stay away from it as much as possible. Okay, so technical tip number 7, don't exaggerate. my little boy is trying to get out. I just wanted to put this up here. So let's just read this comment, right? Our organization is the best at installing child-proof cabinets. We never had a complaint or never have a complaint. I would highly recommend staying away from never and always. It's just something that can surface like your red flag when you're reading something. And you can see next to it, there's this child-proof kind of device. I want you to think about your own BS matter, a meter, not matter. And when does it go off? Are there certain words or terms that are like, it sets it off? As a reader, you can tell when somebody's kind of like embellishing because they're not fully sure about their product or what they're doing. You can tell when somebody knows everything because they're very specific. And so just be careful about exaggerating what you're doing. Just, it kind of goes into it doesn't go into the next one, but anyway, watch this. Tip number 8, use regular white copy paper and basic font. So the same thing, I say this coming from a reviewer. If the grant guidelines don't tell you what type of font or size to utilize, I go with 12-point Arial font. Basic, simple, easy to read. When you have to read hundreds of them, or, reviewers read maybe 15 to 20 at a time, your eyes need to see some clear definition. You might want to try and stand out by having some, something fancy. I just highly recommend not going that route. All right, tip number 9, follow instructions exactly. So this goes a little bit with the exaggeration piece, and this is what I was going to go into is, follow these instructions. Make sure that you are doing exactly what they're saying. And this is a test. This is a test. You want to pass it, right? So just imagine if you don't follow the full instructions of writing the grant, what does that say to the funder about what you're going to be like when you're implementing the dollars? Are you going to follow the requirements when you're implementing the dollars? Are they going to have a concern with you? Are they going to have an issue? Like this is telling. It's very telling. So just be mindful of that when you're writing. And sometimes you'll come across something where it says, it'll ask you a question you just don't know the answer to, or it could be something simple as like number the pages, or I don't know, it could be simple and you just don't because you ran out of time or because you really don't think it's important. It's very important. If the funder is asking you to do it, you need to do it. There's reasons they might not explain. All right, tip number 10, get a proofreader. Make sure that you are done with your grant 1 week before it's due, at least 1 week before it's due. When you ask and you find a proofreader, you make sure that it's somebody outside your organization that is not very familiar with your nonprofit, because you want somebody's outside eyes coming in and to be able to fully see and articulate and read what you're saying and to see if it makes sense. And then you're also being very clear with the proofreader. Are you asking them to look at the flow of everything? Are you looking for grammar and spelling, or both? Be very clear when you're asking. Maybe you have 2 different proofreaders that are doing something separate, but get them from the outside. you want to do this and make sure, because when I'm reading a grant and there's all these spelling errors and stuff, I'm like, okay, they rushed through it, right? Like, yeah, some people just don't spell well. That's just the nature of society. Some people's brains don't operate that. That's not a big deal. But if you had prepared and finished it on time, you would have had time to have a proofreader and those mistakes would not be there. So please be mindful of this and how it looks for you. And then I have a bonus tip. Oh, it's a little blurry too. All right, bonus tip. Yay, you got the grant. Now what do? This is something that I don't think many people truly do think about, and it's extremely important. First thing you do is send a quick email or whatever the most common relationship communication is with that funder for you. If it's a phone, if it's email, whatever it is, it's an instant thank you. And then you do a handwritten thank you. And then if you're working with, if the funds are going towards individuals or kids, that you can express to them and share with them that this funder is the reason why they're getting services, then you do a thank you with them. Maybe it's a card and a picture of everybody and they all sign it, or, you know, there's lots of different ideas, but there's stages. And in my, let's see, yeah, in my training, I go more in depth into this because it is important, and I give more examples and templates. All right, so this is the end of my 11 tips. And so what I want to do right now is transition into what is my, what's exciting and what's coming in July. So I will answer any questions at the end and we will go from there. I'm super excited. What's happening in July? It's the launch of a grant writing essentials course. I have been putting this together for probably a year, and then we had COVID, and so I made some adaptions. And so just really want to share with everybody what I have. You essentially have 20 years of my experience packed into this course, and it's got 10 essentials. It's got 10 essentials, and I'm going to go through those pieces in just a bit. But first, why I created this. So I have to tell you this picture. I created this because I didn't want you to feel this way, right? There's this picture of my son crying, and I don't want you to feel that way. I don't want you to be frustrated. I want you to be excited and happy and joyful. So this is something typically they say you should do, the positive, but I wanted you to just see that I don't want you to be in this place. My 8-year-old son was so mad at me because I used this picture. It's like, why are you doing that? And then I explained to him, I was like, I don't want anybody else to experience it. So I created this course. So in 2019, $796 billion was given through grant making. It's essential that you know how to grab a piece of this pie and that you do it in a very strategic, smart manner that saves you time and that you're effective in your communication. And that is what I really want to set you up for success. So there's a little problem that I've learned and that I've seen over time from my experience working nonprofits and also just in reading and being with grantees. Small and medium-sized nonprofits, they struggle the most with writing effective grants over and over again. And a lot of it's because we wear too many hats, and not enough funding to pay for a grant writer, right? And then you have the executive director or a staff member that's trying to do it kind of on their own. And that used to be me. I never had help. I never took a course. I had to learn all this on my own. In fact, I took a course probably 10, 12 years after I started doing all this. And then I realized, why don't you just get a little help? And it was wonderful. Anyway, so this is why I created the course for you. What's included? You get 24-hour access to, for 1 year, 11 modules, 10 core basic essential grant writing components. And it's designed to where you can write the whole grant. It's almost like a mini strategic plan is what you're set up to write. That's literally how I should frame it, as a mini strategic plan. But you're setting yourself up so that you can write the grants, right? So you get and you collect all the materials, you write them. And also what it does for you is it improves your nonprofit 100%. This is something I found when I would write grants along the way. They would ask for things and I'd be like, oh, that's a lot of work. And you know what? I did it. And it helped my organization so much because it pushed me into a higher quality version of the nonprofit. And that's what this course does. It pushes you to collect and put everything together that you're going to need for all different types of nonprofit or grants, and it'll push your quality higher. All right. With that, you also get a bonus for how to search for grants. This is part of the time saving factor that I want to do for you. Now, this piece is will be available in July, and I'll explain more of that later. Okay, so then access to a private Facebook group. And this private Facebook group, I will be posting all different types of grants that are available to apply for. It's a community where you're all learning together. And the intent for me is to be able to cultivate some collaboration. I've learned through a lot of my consulting and just working with different nonprofits that there might be 10 nonprofits across the US that are doing the same thing. And why not get them together to like talk about their strengths and areas that they could use improvement and struggles, and how just having that camaraderie. So that's my goal with the Facebook group. And then the monthly Q&A calls. This is huge, right? So you're essentially getting once a month for an hour, you get on the call, you ask your questions, and this is for everybody. You ask your questions that would be about the grants you're writing or you're going to write, or how to search, or whatever it is. So this is what it is. So let's talk about value, right? So the access to the course, $597. It's probably worth way more than that because it's literally 20 years of my life compacted into one. So access to a private Facebook group, 100 and monthly Q&A calls. This is huge, right? I charge $120 an hour for private consulting for nonprofits and grant writing. And so for 12 hours, that's $1,400. You're getting a lot. And then you get, so here's the thing, when I said that the full course is not available till July, in the meantime, you do get this bonus 45-minute mini writing course, which is a condensed version of my big course. So you will have the instant access to that because I want you to have something to get you going when you get started before July. So total value, $2,300, almost $2,400, right? Okay. My mission is to support small and medium-sized nonprofits. My small and medium-sized nonprofits could not really afford the $2,300 when I worked in their organizations. That was a lot. Granted, this is a lot and it's worth a lot, but I want to make sure you're successful. So I'm only charging $497. Huge discount, huge. And because I'm doing kind of like a pre-launch, I am, for those that sign up and get the course, and it's kind of a membership essentially for a year because you have access to all this for a year, I am giving you a $200 discount. So if you sign up today, before June 15th, you will save an extra $200. So only $297. I am super excited to support you. And then here's just one of my success stories. We have had great success with grants since receiving help and feedback from Safekin Consulting. Last year was actually the most grants we've ever received, and we're on track to receive the same this year. Heather's feedback and help was tremendous, and I can't thank her enough. It was really exciting to get this. Actually, it's so fun when you get some of these testimonials and you realize, wow, I am making that difference. So I just want to make that difference for you, and I'm here for your success. Timeline, like I said, you get the early bird pricing, $200 off. I've already said this information. You get the mini course, Facebook access to Facebook, and Q&A sessions right away. And then in July, you'll get the large course. And in August and May, you're going to start writing your successful grants. All right. Any questions? And let's see, I think I answered most of the questions in the chat as we were going. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. And we are excited to get you off and running. You have a wonderful rest of your day.